Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. I'm very pleased to be joined by Professor Tim Mays. Professor Mays is a professor of chemical and material engineering at the University of Bath in the UK, and he's going to be one of our speakers at the forthcoming World Hydrogen UK event, which is happening 9th to 11th of April 2024 in London. So welcome, Professor Mays. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
You're obviously involved, or you've been involved for, I think, most of your career in around the hydrogen space. So it's certainly probably quite exciting now to see some quite huge advances and strides, particularly over the last sort of 4 or 5 years. Maybe you could just paint a picture of your background, and then we can maybe discuss some of your upcoming or the areas of research that you're actually currently involved
Yes.
in.
Thank you, Nadeem. Yes, I've been working on sustainable hydrogen energy systems for over 20 years now, through, how should I say, thick and thin. There have been periods in that time where hydrogen was seen as niche at best. However, the last 4 or 5 years, especially after net zero, hydrogen is seen as one of an essential ingredient in decarbonising our economy, not only in the UK, but globally. And I'm taking full advantage of that. I feel vindicated in some senses that pressing on with that area has now borne fruit. So I'm very lucky at the moment to be involved in a large number of projects, and I have been over the last 20 years, but now things are really taking off.
Yeah, and you're obviously there based in University of Bath and sort of southwest. I understand there's some projects happening around those. Maybe you want to sort of start with talking about what's happening down in your area of the world.
Okay, well, certainly Bath is actually a very active university on the hydrogen front. There's a lot of stuff coming into the university, so I'm naturally going to flag that up as my home institution. Uh, I'm actually involved in currently in three large projects funded by the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council in the UK. That's public funding of university research. The first one is called UK High Res, which is a national programme related to identifying and prioritising research challenges that will enable quick uptake of hydrogen technology as we move into net zero. And this is a technology related project. It covers the whole of the value chain: production, storage, distribution, and use, and also alternative carriers such as ammonia. So that is one of my first projects I'm leading at Bath, but it's a national project involving over 30 partners across the UK.
What are some of the areas you're uncovering, or you think are areas of I guess weakness or need further research or more technology developed in those areas?
I think it's like picking your favourite child. I don't think there's any one particular sweet spot. I think that there are issues in electrolysis. The government has in the UK has decided that we're going to produce a huge amount of low carbon hydrogen, and really we need to scale up our infrastructure in terms of how you make it, whether it's electrolysis, which is likely to be the primary technology, or other methods. So we need to be able to understand the life cycle of electrolyzers and how they can work and how they can be optimized. We need to understand better ways of storing and moving hydrogen around, which is my area, incidentally. And thirdly, we also need to identify and optimize how they're used downstream, for example, for heating or for power or for chemicals or for transport or for all the kinds of applications that we know hydrogen can be used for. So I wouldn't like to identify one particular challenge because that would imply that that's the only one. There are many
Yeah,
along the way, but there are some in all of these elements of the value chain.
yeah, excellent. And some of the other projects you're involved in?
Okay. Another project that I'm actually not leading it, but I'm one of the lead investigators is called Zenith, and it's a relationship between the University of Bath and GKN Aerospace, which is nearby in Bristol. They have a global technology centre in Bristol, and this is all about understanding and identifying liquid hydrogen as a fuel for future aviation. It's quite long term. We're looking 2035 or that kind of timeline. But there's a significant amount of R&D and innovation that needs to be done in order to redesign the aircraft and understand how it would operate with using liquid hydrogen. And there are all sorts of interesting challenges there. The materials to contain liquid hydrogen need to be understood, the design of the aircraft, and so on. And this is, if you like, a arrangement specifically between Bath and GKN, and this is currently running for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. I can
Um,
imagine also that there's huge challenges around actually liquefying hydrogen and the process to
Actually,
do that.
I think it is difficult to liquefy. It's also difficult to keep it liquid, if you like,
Mm.
because it's minus 253 degrees Celsius. So
Yeah.
there are challenges at getting it there and challenges keeping it there. So all in all, there are lots of you can liquefy hydrogen. The technology is well understood. It's whether or not you can do it economically and safely. That's the big issue at the moment. And I think,
Yeah.
uh, and also how liquid hydrogen interacts with the materials that's containing it. So there are lots of interesting challenges. The technology is kind of like there, but it's nowhere near optimized,
Yeah.
and especially for aviation.
Yeah. And then what is the other projects you mentioned?
Yeah, the third project which I'm leading, as I'm leading the UK high-res project, is called GW Shift. A lot of these projects have acronyms, I'm afraid. This is also funded by the EPSRC, and it's a excuse me, it's a program excuse me, it's a program concentrated on developing a hydrogen ecosystem in the south of Wales and the southwest of England. So it's rather like a stakeholder engagement project between academia, universities, and industry in order to exploit the current momentum and interest in hydrogen in aerospace, for example. And
Mhm.
there's a significant legacy of aerospace industry in the UK in this region, and also offshore renewable energy, and also some of the foundation industries, steel and some uh, cement and glass manufacture, which is also in southwest of England, but also especially in the southwest of Wales, south of Wales.
Yeah.
And the idea here is at the end of the 4 year project, we will have established a network, or we're calling it a supercluster, sounds a bit
Mm.
ambitious, where
Yeah.
we'll exploit these interests and be able to run with them and develop our economy in the southwest of England and the South Wales, which is not always been a priority area of funding from the government as part of their levelling up process. So we're
Yeah.
looking forward to that.
Excellent. A lot happening. And in terms of, I guess, the sort of big picture, and you mentioned obviously you've been working with hydrogen and looking at hydrogen systems for a significant part of your career. And what are some of your thoughts around the I guess the ramp up and the interest of hydrogen? Clearly, I mean, you mentioned net zero. Obviously, the movement to net zero is a huge challenge, if not one of the biggest challenges we've set ourselves in terms of having to sort of re-engineer our entire energy system. But clearly, there's going to be a lot of renewables and electricity in the system, but equally, there is a huge value in the molecule side, and seems to be the molecules are going to be really centered around hydrogen. What are some of your thoughts around, I guess, the debates and also I guess the sheer challenges of innovation and developing technology and trying to meet that net zero goal?
Wow, well, that's a huge
Yeah,
a
it's a
huge
big
question,
question. Yeah.
Hattie, but I'll pick it up with some examples if I may.
Mm,
First of all, net zero is undoubtedly a principal driver. I think when net zero was signed off, it became clear that there needed to be all sorts of options to help us achieve that very ambitious target. And hydrogen came back into view as a significant option to be able to achieve this. And of course, the motivation for that is that hydrogen acts as a buffer between supply and demand mismatch for renewable energy, whether it's wind or solar or any of the other renewables that we have. We are lucky to have in the UK a significant asset in the UK that we need to exploit. So that's why hydrogen is now seen as this significant enabler for net zero. I think that it clearly is linked with renewables, so we shouldn't ever forget that. It doesn't exist on its own.
mm,
And the majority method to make hydrogen will likely be water electrolysis using renewable electricity. And I would also say not only renewables, but nuclear.
mm.
There is a significant interest in developing our nuclear technology in the UK. The old nuclear reactors are starting to get a bit elderly, We're already building Hinkley Point C, and there's a plan to produce Sizewell C in Suffolk. And there may well be these small modular reactors distributed around the system to help us generate clean electricity. And I believe that nuclear is clean electricity,
Yeah.
although there are issues with waste management. And so we're looking to hydrogen to not only balance supply and demand mismatch from renewables, but also as a way of exploiting nuclear electricity. And the way that I try and sell hydrogen, if I can put it that way, is by saying, well, actually, it has a wide variety of uses beyond the sort of simple power and heating that we're used to. That they
Mm.
can go into transport, can go into chemicals, and I think that's. And you use the word molecules. I think the molecule side of energy systems is going to be very important. Hydrogen's going to be the leading one. So it does have its issues, hydrogen. We can't pretend that there aren't things we need to manage. For example, it needs to be managed very carefully for health and safety.
Mm.
It leaks. Hydrogen tends to leak, however hard you try. And so we need to be able to manage that very carefully because hydrogen has a global warming potential.
Yeah.
So we need to manage that very carefully. But there are lots of initiatives undergoing at the moment. But the problem at the moment, Nadine, is in the UK, you don't see hydrogen cars driving around much. You don't see hydrogen trains driving around much, or trucks, still less aircraft. And I think that we do need to recognise that we're not quite there yet in terms of the infrastructure and actually showing consumers, citizens, that
Mm.
it's a workable, safe technology.
Yeah.
And one area that I'm very interested in is blending hydrogen into the gas grid.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is because the gas grid's a big thing and can take up a lot of hydrogen. And the government has agreed to go up to 20% into the gas grid at the moment without the safety case still has to be made, but the principle is there. And the reason you can go up to 20% is because you don't need to do a lot of downstream tweaking with boilers and gas turbines.
Yeah.
But actually, the main reason that the government wants to do this is not so much for sustainability reasons, to encourage the market, to encourage people both to make it and then use it.
Yeah.
And at the moment, there's this rather unfortunate position of chicken and the egg. Someone is not going to make a lot of hydrogen unless they can sell it.
Yeah.
And someone's not going to build an infrastructure to use the hydrogen unless they can get hold of it.
Yeah.
Until there's manufacture at scale and an offtake at scale, then we're rather sort of holding our breath a little bit.
Yeah.
So while I'm a big fan of the technology, I think that maybe one of the blockages is more to do with marketization
Mhm.
of this new technology, which I
Yeah.
think is interesting and safe and valuable. But I think the market will ultimately determine when and if it starts up in anger.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, many thanks, Professor Mays. That's a fascinating point, and looking forward to having your contribution at the live event, which is this week in London, as I mentioned, and indeed at our future events and online at World Hydrogen Leaders. So many thanks, Tim, and we look forward to seeing you face to face later on this week.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Nadine.
Cheers. Take care now. Bye bye.
Bye bye.